Welcome back. You're still tuned in to Salam Media with myself, Salailo Makwidiri, and we're going to be chatting to Hassen Lorgat in a bit, where we'll be turning our attention to grave human rights issues unfolding right here in South Africa. Operation Valumkoti, a police crackdown on illegal miners, has sparked fierce debate, while the operation itself is officially framed as a response to illegal mining, it has raised serious concerns about human rights abuses. Authorities have reportedly trapped thousands of artisanal miners underground, denying them food and water in an attempt to force them to surrender. The parallels drawn between this operation and the ongoing humanitarian crisis in Gaza have fueled calls for a re-examination of how the state treats its most vulnerable citizens. Critics argue that Operation Valumkot is not just about combating crime, but also about protecting the interests of powerful multinational mining companies at the expense of impoverished communities. And to help us unpack this complex issue, we're joined by Hassen Lorgat. He's a social justice activist who has been at the forefront of advocating for the rights of the marginalized communities. Hassan, thank you so much for joining us out in Barcelona. Looking great. Always a pleasure chatting to you.
Thank you for having me. I think the heavy topic, I just arrived here, so I'll be getting back soon.
Sure.
The heavy topics that we deal with here, when you look at it from a bit of afar, you see it in a historical context. I mean, some historians have pointed out that South Africa's um, wealth that you see, buildings and that is not only due to the diamonds and gold, which we've had a plenty of, but largely due to cheap labor. And if you look at 2022, we had a massive job culling, which some people say was over 100,000 in the mining sector. So that, in addition to the fact that we've had historically large pools of labor coming from Lesotho and the sub-region, at one stage, half the able-bodied people, humans and males largely, from Lesotho were working on the mines. And the tragedy is that when you go there, you find that a lot of them are disabled and still trying to get claims on the silicosis case and unclaimed benefits in our country. I think partly the progressive movement has failed to put forward an alternative agenda. We struggle, we don't get enough coverage for our views, but I really think we need to have some discussion about the role mining has played in the sub-region, how much we owe the sub-region. This is the SADC countries, from the time when it was Nyasa land and others, workers came from everywhere. Some, like Tanzanian workers, stopped working here because of apartheid, when Nyerere and others upped the ante. But others continued right through. Mozambican and particularly Shangani workers were regarded very highly to work deep underground. We need to have that conversation. And again, as I said, unfortunately, when we do try to discuss history and its impacts, I don't know if it's only social media, but short-termism seems to step in, and that everything is just about now. And we want them to go close the holes. There's a lot of callousness out there, a lot of hate, and the politicians have not helped us. From all historical progressive to the right-wing ones, they've all been pushing that we're in this problem because of foreigners, without looking that we profited on cheap labor. So we're in a bad space, yes.
I think, with that being said, I agree with a lot that you're saying, but another side would be, how do we strike a balancing act? South Africa is still a sovereign country. There's still laws in this country that need to be adhered to. How do we then strike a balance between effectively addressing illegal mining in this instance, and also protecting the human rights of those involved, and also appreciating, I think, some of the elements that you've mentioned about, the wealth of this country, and ultimately where it comes from and who it can be attributed to?
Yeah, I mean, Salala, where do you start? I mean, you don't start from today. I mean, as I said, from the turn of the century, we had workers coming from the sub-region. We partly, I mean, apartheid was not just worried about the color of our skins. They were worried that they were concerned, and they uh, uh, shaped it in such a way, the discourse, that those who were inferior uh, had to do labor for those who are wealthier. And Joburg was built on the sweat of those who came from the sub-region, as well as those from the so-called labor sending areas inside South Africa. In 1987, the mining houses agreed among themselves, right, that they were going to keep the wages of black workers very low. They call it the maximum wage policy. And from 1897 to 1970s, this agreement was in place, where the bosses agreed among themselves not to pay more wages for black workers. And if you look at that, tied to the idea that at that time white workers had the right to form unions and defend themselves, whereas black workers didn't have this. These were all black workers, from the immigrants to now. James Motlatsi and others come from Lesotho. They were leaders of our mine workers union until very recently, when he retired. So when there's redress that we want, why is it that we look back? The story I tell you about the maximum wage policy was made by the ANC in a submission to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. ANC said this was it. They didn't say this redress, this denial of rights, of unions, of human rights, the indignity of sleeping in compounds, all that. They didn't say it must only be dealt for South Africans. So they all suffered it. I'm not saying that the politicians always have this problem,
Mm.
that we had bridges that collapsed a few, maybe 2 years ago or so. But it's not only a South African phenomenon, it's also international. Partly what happened is that when you have to go and present books, you say, oh no, we're balancing the books, so the budget is fine. Yeah. And then you don't put money in for something that's unpopular, something that talks about uh, 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 investing for the future, because it's not popular. It's like an amount that you have to set aside to wait. It's wasteful. Similarly with the mines, when the boss is in charge of the mine, when he gets a mining license, that very day they have to think about how the mine will be closed in 20 years' time, and they have to put aside monies for mine closure,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
A bank check has to be given. They don't ask who it is. They're saying, well, this is how the land will be rehabilitated. And I guess it was, we'd like to argue, how the humans will be re-restituted, being proper humans. But then what happens? You're living next to a mine dump, let's say in Soweto, or I mean, you go to areas of Soweto or Riverlea, the other side, right? People breathe this air for 30, 20 odd years. Meadowlands, and that people have asthmas and that related to this mine dump. Uh, Now there's a time to clean this up, and now they're beginning to remine for critical raw materials. And then we need to ask questions, and as we are, what happened to that funds to rehabilitate people? What happened to
Mm.
the funds that are unclaimed by foreign mine workers and others that are laying in benefits in our? I believe it goes into billions, right? This is the monies that must be put into helping poor and unemployed that are there. We don't have a problem of money. We have a problem of money going only to some people and not to programs that will ensure mass employment or dignity for people. So that's the kind of problem that we're facing, is that we all want a just solution, but when the pie is so small, you start looking at your neighbor and you start thinking that they're only scrounging on you, that they're not
Mm.
there because they've contributed, they've paid their price. The other day I engaged in a public platform, and I said, people must stop talking about hate when about this Nigeria thing, rather to turn it around and see this deal with that and free Africa, right? Is it the level of self-hate is such where every time you mention Nigeria, oh, people go crazy? It's like, and it's not always been like that. We're really looking at a small period of time, and not every Nigerian should be cast as a drug dealer. The country is so powerful. It's got 200 million people. It's got oil, gas, and that. And when you think Biden goes there, he's not going there just to get himself a braid or something. You know, his hair's falling off, so there's a lot that Nigeria does that can offer. But quite clearly, he's going there because they have oil, and that
Mm,
oil doesn't have to leave the shores of Africa. It can also come in to help us and make our economies more sustainable, hopefully more cleaner as well. So I just think that we need to have this tough conversations that uh, uh, we're hard on each other. I mean, it's like black self-hate. We don't like the others who are from here, but we can embrace everything else that is out there.
mm,
Yeah.
mm. No, definitely. And I think we're going to leave it on that note. We have unfortunately run out of time, Hassan, but thank you so much for your valuable insights. I think it's clear that while illegal mining must be curbed for the safety and sustainability of South Africa, we must also consider the broader social and economic issues at play. And we hope the conversation today has helped consider the broader social and give a more balanced approach to this issue. Yeah, but we're going to leave it here for now. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. See you soon.
There you go. That was Hassen Lorgat there. He's a social justice activist, and we're having a conversation about the issue of those illegal miners that are stuck underground in Stilfontein. I think it would be so easy to just say, these are zamazamas. They must be. Using the words of one minister, they must be smoked out, and by using methods such as, refusing them food and water and any kind of basic creature comforts needed for survival. But there's a broader kind of issue, to this conversation. There are mining companies who were supposed to be rehabilitating that land, and they didn't do that. Who's holding them accountable? Eh? The government is taking so long, to making sure that artisanal mining in South Africa is easy and there isn't so much red tape around it. That's also taking so long. So, you know, there's it's a two-way conversation. Can't just focus on the zamazamas because, well, they are the poor, they are black or they are foreigners, and they need to be smoked out. And I heard some social media comments, someone saying, "Why don't you just stuff some concrete and cement into the holes there and into the shafts, and just forget about the issue." They're still human beings. They're still black South Africans. They're still black Africans who have suffered, and it's not by choice that they're underground. It's because of the circumstances they find themselves in that are still largely can be attributed to apartheid and white monopoly capital that keeps hoarding the wealth of this country and not making sure that is shared and distributed evenly. Going to take a quick break. When I come back, News and Views continues.